All right. Well, I am super excited today. I have a special guest that I actually met at a lunch and learn for AI and cybersecurity. His name is Jon Evans, and he is the Chief AI Officer at Impact Networking. He's been there about 18 years, so a very long tenure there. As well, he has a tremendously extensive technical background, and we were able to sync our synergies on some of our endeavors when it came to tech and starting out in the .com area all the way to now AI and being able to navigate these conversations with business owners as they look to the future and look to how they want to actually incorporate AI into their business. So, Jon, welcome to Otissa and Company. And is there anything that I left out that you would love to share with the audience?
Thanks, Otissa. I appreciate it. Oftentimes I tell people just from a context setting perspective, like there's three things that I spend a majority of my brain thinking about, and those are birds, punk rock, and disruptive transformation. So like this has all been wheelhouse for me. But yeah, between those three things, I think you're most likely going to want to talk about disruptive technology too. So
I was like, oh, I'll take the third one, please. Alex, I'll take the third one.
right. If you have any other questions about birds or punk rock, just pepper them in.
Birds maybe sometimes, but thank you. I really appreciate it. I think this is going to be a fun conversation. So I'm going to just dive right into it.
Yeah.
I always try and ahead of time, come up with a few questions that I think are very relevant to our audience, excuse me, which are a lot of small business owners and, people that I think are on the fence of entrepreneurship. So they're in various stages of developing, what that next path looks like for them. So I always like to have different kinds of guests on to talk about different facets of the journey. And today it's all about the tech, which gets me very excited and I hope gets some other folks very excited. So, my first question, Jon, is
Sure.
you during the lunch and learn, the AI cybersecurity lunch and learn, which was fabulous
Mhm.
at your
Thank
offices
you.
in LA, you drew a distinction between efficiency optimization and intelligence partnership.
Sure.
Tell
Yes.
me, what does it look like in practice and why does the difference matter so much for where a business actually ends up?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question, and I think it's key to how to understand this whole transformation, right? It's pretty easy right now for people to think about AI as a technology that provides efficiency, right? Like the efficiency gains inside the AI space are plentiful. There's all sorts of things that you can do, but I've spent the better part of 20 to 25 years working in business process efficiency, right? Working in back office processes, helping people understand how to make AP processes, HR processes, all of these things faster and faster and faster. And it's been my experience that through all of that work, my kind of best projects would hit 30% gains. Like 30% gains would be an incredible efficiency project,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
If we think about that and the application of AI to a process whose maximum efficiency with technology is going to be 30%, right? And then we think about what the real distinction is to intelligent partnership. We move from the idea of making something faster instead into recreating something, making something brand new with
mhm.
this technology, with intelligence, right? And I think the most practical way is to kind of walk you through an example, if you're good with it.
Yes, 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 please.
Well, part of our business here at Impact Networking is that we have a managed service provider arm that handles specifically IT concerns, right? So we handle networks for all sorts of different companies, right?
Mhm,
From 20 people to thousands of people. Because of that, we have a help desk that has to take in help desk tickets. And one of the things that we noticed is that our sort of pipeline of talent through our help desk started with this triage position where all the incoming tickets would fall onto the desk of a couple of people who were just new to the company, learning the process, and they would figure out who to assign the tickets to
mhm,
and be like, we're going to
mhm.
put this here. This goes to this one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they would run this triage process. So one of the first projects that came across the desk of my team, right? Like I run a team, multiple teams, but one dedicated specifically to AI transformation
Mhm,
inside Impact, right? So that project comes across our desk. Like, how can we make the AI or how can we use AI to make this triage process faster? Right.
mhm,
And that was the specific request, faster. So we looked at it and we figured out we could bring these tickets into AI. We can have them read and understood against our service catalog, the
mhm,
contracts of the customer, all of these different things, and figure out specifically where to put that ticket. The previous process with people would take anywhere between 7 to 10 minutes to move that ticket to the right spot. They stack up all of people have to read them and go through it. Once we crafted that solution together to understand how to read the tickets and get all the info we needed, we've shortened that down to 19 seconds, right?
Mhm.
Or I'm sorry, 9 to 10 seconds,
Yeah.
even better than I thought, right?
Mhm.
9 to 10 seconds for an incoming ticket to land in somebody's queue to start working on it. But the problem was like in the efficiency space, that feels like a win
Mhm.
where we're
Mhm.
like, we just shaved 9 minutes off of the
Yeah.
entire
For
process.
some, it
This is
would
great.
be.
Yeah, right. But the idea of a ticket arriving in a queue for someone to work on it has no effect to our customer, right?
Mm.
Like they don't see that efficiency as a win. Like for
Mm.
us, that's getting it into position to do a thing. But
Mhm.
to the customer, it's like they still haven't gotten their ticket solved. So that would be efficiency. We would stop at that moment. But what we did was like really reassess the problem for the outcome we were looking for.
Mhm.
And the outcome we're looking for is for tickets to get solved faster, and getting them into a technician's hands is only part of the battle of solving them, right?
Mhm.
So where the intelligent partnership comes in is we have a faster process, but also we know a bunch of things now about who the customer is, what the contract is, what the
Yeah.
problem is, and
Mhm.
we can start to investigate from our knowledge bases, from the information that LLMs have, to all sorts of different sources to enhance that ticket data and basically start to say, like, when this lands in a queue in 9 seconds, how do we put more data into the ticket itself? So now the person who picks it up can act on it faster and
Yep.
ultimately resolve that sooner. That's the outcome that we were looking for, is
Mhm.
excellent service delivery, not faster processes,
Yeah.
right? In the efficiency space for decades, there's likely multiple technologies I would have been able to employ to make that process faster, right?
Mhm.
It isn't until the advent of AI where I can make that process smarter, where I can
Yes, the
actually like
intelligence layer.
enhance this. Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. So that sort of partnership becomes key, right? To how to differentiate those. But that to me is only like the first sort of layer of it. The other layers are intelligent partnership means like, how do I get intelligence that exists in tacit information in people's heads into systems and
Yeah.
processes in ways where I can enhance what people know when they know it,
Yeah.
right? How do
Yeah.
I keep consistency between a customer experience, between handoff of resources, between phases of projects, right?
Yeah.
All of these become relevant in partnership. So efficiency solves for gains at 30%.
Mhm.
Intelligence solves for outcomes that matter, that grow exponentially.
Yeah.
Like even that triage system that I described, in another couple of weeks, the next release of that triage system is going to start like replying to customers,
Yeah.
helping them
Yeah.
with issues with
Yeah.
self-service, like explaining to customers exactly what their expectation should be around timelines. And I
Yeah.
can pull all this data in to make that happen, right? So
Yeah.
like that's what I mean when I say like efficiency, capture
Mhm.
gains, thought partnership, and intelligence actually provides you exponential sort of hockey stick
Yeah.
growth.
Well, and what you're talking about, I think as I talk to a lot of business owners, what I'm learning is the possibilities are so, let's just say, different from what their current state is,
Yeah.
that it is a faith journey to go,
Yeah.
no, it really is possible with this current technology.
Yes.
No, it's not. I'm always advocating that it's AI is not magic. Like there
Yeah.
is a technical tool that when applied in the right situations can be extremely powerful and can save a ton of time that you didn't even know you needed to save.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Now that you have it, you're like, I can't live without it, right?
Yeah.
It's like our phones. I mean, at one point in time, you would be okay with leaving your phone at home. Now
Yeah.
it's like, I'm walking around with this computer all the time. It has all this
Yeah.
information. I'm not okay with leaving it at home anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
And I feel like AI is that for business owners. It is the thing that, you may have thought like, I'm okay, we're moving forward, but it's like,
Yeah.
okay, but what if you could move forward in this way and have this kind of intelligence
Yeah.
integrated in your business on a day-to-day basis? And you
Yeah.
start small, right? I'm constantly saying, listen, start small. You don't need to start, but prove the concept. And then once you prove the concept, continue to build on that. Like I do believe
Absolutely.
in helping people to see a quick win that they can
Sure.
then, but I also am like, I want you to always have realistic expectations of what
Yeah.
leveraging this kind of technology right feels like. And it's not always, let me just put in a prompt, and then voila. No,
Exactly.
there's infrastructure. I talk about building operational infrastructure in businesses, and there's infrastructure that, when built correctly, right, with that right logic and reasoning, you get powerful results. So
Oh, agreed.
I love that you gave an actual practical example of ticketing, because I think a lot of business owners, if they, have any type of customer support in their company, which I hope they all
Yeah.
do, you are having to contend with, how is this managed? How is that system
Right.
managed?
Yeah.
And how can we be not only more efficient, but more intelligent, so that basically really the time to respond to a customer improves, right? It's like, now we've given
Exactly.
you really valuable insight and solved what you were actually reaching out to us about.
Yeah.
Like,
And
it's a
you see that,
win.
yeah, and the move in there though is that you move it from efficiency conversation to outcome conversation.
Yeah.
Like you move it from the space of like the concern of the business to make things faster to the outcome that actually supports the business and
Yes.
pushes you into the future, right? And
Yes.
I love what you said in there about the idea of like we have to see this technology as propelling us forward, right? And propelling us forward also requires us to look at like where we want to be,
Yeah.
like who do we want to be as organizations, how do we want to service people, and in changing technology landscapes, it's the best time to reassess like what is my competitive moat, like why do
Yeah.
people choose me over other people,
Mhm.
and they think that AI is just like this is a technology concern. It's like getting a phone system or a better database, right?
Yeah.
They're really yet finding how transformative this can actually be inside organizations. So
Yeah.
these are key issues I think people need to grapple with, like understanding infrastructure supporting the AI journey, totally foundational and key, and then understanding the real transformative power to move process, to move
Yes.
people, and to reshape orgs is just it's essential right now.
Yes. Yes. All right. I love that. Okay. So my next question is, you talked about transactional AI versus thought architecture. I kind of touched on this a little bit, but how do you help a business recognize which one they're doing? Because in my work with small business owners, that gap is usually the whole problem, is
Sure.
they're underestimating the power of the tool. They've seen a few demos of, some possibilities, but they can't quite understand how that could help their organization. And there's this change management thing, right? We've always done it this way.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
know we need something, but maybe we don't need as much, and it's like, no, no, no. This is transformative throughout your business, in every functional area of your
Right.
business. A project should spin up, and you should
Yeah.
actually be looking at ways in which to not only be more efficient, but to gain the intelligence with
Yeah.
efficiency, because a lot of that data is within their systems already. And it
Yeah.
just hasn't been mapped or integrated in the right way with the right tools, in order
Right.
to have a clear path forward with, some type of workflow that makes sense to bring about the outcomes that we are talking about. So give
Yeah.
any kind of
Exactly.
insight you can to that.
Well, the sort of transactional AI use versus what we call thought architecture, right?
Mhm.
This really my impression of why so many people are stuck in the kind of transactional use is first off, it's an interface issue because we think about AI as having an interface of a chat. Like we
Yeah.
get to AI through conversation, right?
Mhm.
Conversations in that way are a form of transaction. I'm making a request, the AI is fulfilling that request, and then I'm moving on with my day, right? A lot of people when they first have that experience of chatting with an AI, the results are like not as mind blowing as the technology I talk about all the time. They're like, is this the same
This is
thing?
it.
Yeah, it's the same thing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So that's their first introduction is the sort of transaction of conversation with an AI and pulling those things back in. The reason we kind of pivoted to the idea of moving from that transaction to thought architecture, and I'll get into thought architecture in a second, but that's the link I found we needed to break, right?
Mhm.
Because if you bring the same logic of using ChatGPT or Claude to your business, the only thing you're going to be thinking about is how is my AP process going to be made smarter by
Yeah.
having a bot that answers questions for people?
Mhm.
Like I have people that answer questions for people,
Yeah.
right? Like that disconnect becomes pretty fundamental. So the development of thought architecture, it's like a four phased or it's a 4-step process, right? Like, how do you act with intention to
Mhm.
define the roles of what AI is going to do and what people are going to do,
Yeah.
right? After you define that, how do I build the appropriate context to make sure AI knows what I'm talking about, why I'm talking about it, and what data it should reference as we talk about it, right?
Mhm.
From there, once I have that built, I'm going to start to synthesize all of that, which is really the conversation,
Yeah.
right? When I'm synthesizing, I'm taking all the context I provided to the AI and I'm working through exactly what the AI in its role and me in my role are doing to achieve a task. And then finally, I'm delivering something out of the system. I'm moving it from my personal conversation to something that matters to people outside me and the thought architecture, intent, context, synthesize, and deliver, right? That helps if I sit anyone down and walk them through this and tell them, you need to build your next presentation for this board meeting, right? You can go to your AI and you can ask it, build me a presentation for my next board meeting, and it'll do it.
Yeah.
Its job is to make you happy. You're not going to want to present that presentation to the board, right? Like, don't do that, right? But if you think about it, my intention is to work with an AI to build the best presentation to understand how the board is going to respond to my data. I want the AI to synthesize my data, find trends I haven't seen, help me build visuals and narratives. I want to provide the AI with data and context and coaching, right? I've defined the intention. The context then becomes like, what other information have I presented to the board before? What does a good presentation look like? What is my last quarter sales statistics? Like, how many new customers have I onboarded? I might give it all of that context, right? Then I might move into synthesize and start by asking a simple question like, what does the world tell us about the best possible board presentations that have ever been given, right?
Yeah.
And now suddenly I have a thought partner, I have context, I
Mhm.
have reason to be moving through this stuff. And then finally, I might work with several different tools to deliver the final piece, right? To say
Yeah.
this is the presentation. That whole process might take me hours, right? This might
Mhm.
be multiple sessions of building context and
Yeah.
and synthesizing till I get what I need, till
Mhm.
I'm satisfied, right? Transactional AI is show up, ask for the presentation. Thought architecture is do the work of building the
Yeah.
presentation with the
Yeah.
thought partner, right?
With the research part of it, like go and pull from here and pull from there and bring facts in and test those
Yeah.
facts and validate those
Yeah.
facts to
Exactly.
make sure that what you're giving me as an output is actually the best that it can
Yeah.
be. And
A
yeah,
hundred percent.
no, I love that. I've actually contributed to board decks. And so I understand just, what it takes. And it is an endeavor to put together a board deck. I
Yes.
love that you gave that
Exactly.
example because it is usually, it's cross-departmental, right? There's tons of
Yeah.
different stakeholders that are involved, and contributors involved in the actual build of an
Right.
asset like that. And it's like sometimes the information it changes a bit. There's some events that happen that
Yeah.
change it, but the structure is the
Yeah.
same. Like to be
It's pretty
honest,
known.
right? It's
Yeah. Pretty
it's
well
the
known.
same,
Yeah.
from or excuse me, from quarter to quarter usually. And when that happens, it's like to be able to. It's a massive effort for the company and all the people that are involved to pull together all of the
Right.
various resources and changes throughout the organization to create this
Exactly.
narrative that gives this holistic picture. So I love number one that you said, going out and finding the best of the best, understanding like what actually makes, a really great board deck, right? But not only that,
Exactly.
now take that into my organization and what we do and apply. So apply the
Yeah.
best principles with what is very
Exactly.
customized to our
Right.
industry, to our way of working, and then build. You know what I mean?
Right.
And use these
Exactly.
resources in which to do that up against this and then
Yeah.
challenge me, right? You can have it, challenge you. And it's
Yeah.
so many of those things I think that until you see it kind of in action, and I do a few like little demos to try and like usher people in because
Yeah.
you
Excellent.
want to see the shiny thing. And it's like, okay, yeah, but I'm like, it's so much
Yeah.
more. Like, I can't even like show you, you know,
Yeah.
the breadth of it. It's like I want to, but it's like, okay, we're talking like a 3 to 5 minute demo, but
Yeah.
no, that's not enough. I can show you kind of a before what the use case,
Yeah.
is that we started with, and then, what the outcomes are that we have achieved to give some
Sure.
context into like, oh, okay, now
Yeah.
I see how I can apply this in my own world. I've
Right.
even said to people, just tell me the biggest thing you got going on that, you wish.
Right.
And then I just build from there ad hoc, in the moment, like, okay, well,
Yeah.
these kinds of things to give them like the possibility. It's almost like having to expand the mind.
Yes. Exactly.
And I got to
That's
stretch
what
you
you
a little bit so that
That's the
you can
moment
be
you look
like,
for. You look for the moment where you see that sort of up and to the right sort of recognition that like something has changed. Like you've expanded the idea of what's possible for people by breaking the link between transaction and thought architecture, right? Like
yeah,
getting people over that hump. The thing that happens next once you get them over the hump is like it's really, really rewarding to watch, right?
yes,
Like when
yeah,
you get people to move past that space and then you start to see them and they all go through the same sort of patterns where they come back to you and they're like, "You're not gonna believe what I did." And you're like, "I'm gonna believe it." And
yeah,
then they show me something they built and I'm like, "That's great. You
yeah,
did a great job."
yeah,
It's like
I believe it.
watching people go through all of these processes, once you break that link and they really start to embrace this, their brains move, and then that becomes the fuel for the rest of the organizational change, right? Like,
Yeah,
because that same pattern of intense partnership into context and synthesize, that applies to process and applications and the
yeah,
underpinnings and foundations. We solve for the same things.
mm,
When we solve for ticket triage, there's the same pattern of what is the AI going to do? What's a person going to do? What context do I need to understand all of this stuff? How do I synthesize it all to the right thing and then deliver? In this case, the delivery is a well placed, categorized, prioritized, enriched ticket into the queue of a qualified technician, right?
yeah, yeah,
This
yeah,
the same
yeah,
pattern that
yeah,
I'm teaching people to understand as they sit down to interact with a tool in a chat as it
yeah.
is that we use the underpinnings for large scale application development,
Right.
you know?
Right. Yes, I love that. Okay, so my next question, intentionality by design is something I talk about constantly with my clients. What does it look like when a company skips that step? And what usually
Yeah.
forces them to come back around to it? Because I do believe like everyone wants to try for the quick, fast thing. And
Yeah.
it's like, this is why I say AI is not magic because I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
I love that everyone has been introduced to this technology and they're learning different things. And I do believe in ethical use of AI, and for the better good and not for,
For
the
sure.
destruction of things, but for the better good. And when I'm saying that, I think that, when you're just conversating with it only and you don't have any workflow or, the
Yeah.
agents or any of those kinds of things incorporated into what you're using, to get real good outcomes, yeah, you're going to feel short-sighted and like, I don't know that I need it. That's what usually people think. I don't know that I need it. Definitely not right
Yeah.
now. Or, they think they can wait.
Sure.
And I'm like, oh, but you can't. Do you
Yeah.
understand how quickly this technology is evolving? And it's like what I said before. I can try and show someone something at a before and an after and a little bit of, kind of what it
Sure.
takes. But a lot of times I'm building this according to this person's business, their operational structure. I need to understand like, what do you do now? What do
Yeah.
you do now and how can we augment it with the right piece of technology, workflows, processes, efficiency, and all of those things. So I'm always looking at it from that lens. And it's
Yeah.
not just so simple as let me just take a couple of tasks off your plate. It's like, okay, if I understand truly what you're trying to achieve, we
Exactly.
can lay out the path in a much more robust way that actually sticks with technologies evolving,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Because we solved the right thing. We didn't just
Yeah.
to put it in
Exactly.
a tool, but it's like we understood what you were trying to achieve, like what was actually broken, what system was it serving your company, your customers.
Exactly. Right. And this is where you're at on the idea of intentionality and like how you design for outcomes and purpose, right? This is part of a sort of continuum of the thinking around AI that, since November of 2022, right? Like this is
Mhm.
the same sort of continuum where we started with prompt engineering, right? Where people were like, how do I craft the best prompt to get something back? We moved far too recently into context engineering. How do I
Mhm.
build the right context to use those prompts in the appropriate way? This next front, I think Nate B. Jones, who's a thinker in this space, he defined that as intention engineering,
Mhm.
right? Like, how do we use the technology to achieve the appropriate intentions? which means we have to be intentional about
Yeah.
how we figure it out. We have to sit down and basically say, like, what are the outcomes that we're actually looking for? Like, what do we really want? And that is key because this technology, if your competitor unpacks it and solves for it, that's a direct threat to your business. Like there is a lot of things that are transforming because of this technology. Even in my space, even in the MSP space, like we're seeing, agentic technologies that can sit on people's computers and diagnose things
Yeah.
before the customer even knows that that's an issue, right?
Mhm.
Like that's a direct threat to our business model.
Mhm.
If we don't figure out how to adapt to that, if we don't
Yeah.
figure out how to use that in this space, then we're going to have downward pressure on our pricing. Our
Mhm.
competitive advantage is going to collapse. Like
Mhm.
the intention sometimes needs to be even bigger than people think. So working that intentionally to think, I want to make this faster or hit this outcome or be this kind of company. At some point, you have to make an honest assessment of like who you are as a company and what are you going to do with this technology to bolster exactly the DNA and the fundamentalness of what we do, right?
Yeah.
And watching people get it wrong, it's what it inferred in your question, right? Is like watching people sort of get this wrong and then have to move back into it. It's a difficult process because
Yeah.
you try to get them to move in the right direction at first, but people want to stay in these comfortable spaces of thinking about their domain as opposed to being like AI is not like the threat of AI is not a technology problem.
No.
It's a business problem,
Yeah.
right? They want to apply AI to specific things inside organizations and hope that that bolsters the or that's the appropriate strategy to bolster the org when really we should be rethinking how we use this inside organizations to make moats better. To the point when they get to that point where they realize like, oh, the thing we didn't actually do the thing we thought it was going to do,
Yeah.
right? Like that's yeah. I think back to some of the early moves. Like there's a lot of people who in by 2023, 2024 ish got super excited and very bullish about this idea that AI was going to do all of these transformations. So they preemptively gutted entire departments of people they thought would be made redundant by AI, right? And then ended up having to hire all of them back, right? There was all this sort of like, there's all this kind of like whimsical thinking that
Yeah.
occurred in this place. And then you watch them restaff those people and rework
Yeah.
those people and do all this. If they had worked with intention from the beginning to understand technology capability,
Oh my gosh.
outcomes they want to get to, they would have mapped it out appropriately. But no, instead, like it became magic and they acted as if. So that there's that thinking that
Yeah.
exists. And then there's also the sort of the domain expertise and application of technology to it. So
Mhm.
if you run a business unit, you think in business units, right? If you run a team, you think in your team.
Mhm.
Being able to understand how you need to break those things down and look at whole organizational pictures and capacity. And then to your point, it makes no sense for me to show up and make a recommendation to like my transformation recommendation is everything. Nobody's going to hear that. Yeah,
No,
right.
no.
So then once you understand that complete strategy picture, you have to sort of work backwards into the
Yeah.
space of saying, like, I can change four things. If I change those four things, I'm going to change enough culture and enough people's minds. And I will have proven myself as somebody who can do
Yep.
this transformation that
Yeah.
now I can the next eight. Now I can take on
Yeah.
the next
Yeah.
the shorthand for this in the business process space for me for years was I'm never going to show up and the first recommendation I make is to pull out your ERP. It's
No.
the most, yeah, like it's the most
That's a
expensive,
very painful change.
right? It has a failure rate of over 85%.
Yes.
It's the
Yes.
most expensive piece
The
of
next
tech.
one
It's
is
the
your
most integral
CRM.
thing.
Pull out
Yeah,
the
exactly.
CRM. I'm
Right.
gonna
Like
make you a custom one.
yeah, like I'm going to show up as a transformation expert and help you navigate your business by making a recommendation that you ruin it, right? That's a bad
Yeah.
move.
No.
But what
Yeah.
I can say is like, hey, there's four processes that your ERP doesn't handle. If we
Yeah.
handled them like this, we could build this integration. And then if you want to replace your ERP, we could get to that in 2 years after we
Yeah.
build enough culture and momentum of change that can be absorbed. And I can help mitigate, your multi-million dollar spend against
Yeah.
an 85% failure rate. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
same logic
Yeah.
applies. Like, you
Yeah.
need
Yeah.
to know the entire strategy. You need to find the intersection. That intersection needs to be small enough, but important enough that you're going to move people's brains and then keep moving through that process with momentum to get bigger and bigger.
Yeah. And something that you said, so I think definitely at an enterprise level, as I work with, some smaller to mid-sized businesses, what I find is really working toward one pain point at a time and
Hmm.
understanding how that particular pain point is it revenue impact like what is it people
Yeah.
revenue system like which one
Yeah.
is it really hurting the most in and then going and unpacking that and helping
Yeah.
them to like because I'm like before we talk about I'm always like I don't think it's a technology. There's so many pieces of technology out there to solve everything.
Yeah.
It usually is an internal infrastructure issue or, broken processes, workflows that are just not
Right.
working the way that they used to work now that you've obtained some type of growth. And it's just, it's broken it kind of, and
Yeah.
people are hobbling along, trying to make it work and it's not working as well as it used to. So, one other example that I thought of recently, I heard a story from IKEA, and IKEA
Mhm.
went through this whole change incorporating AI into their customer support area and it
Mhm.
resulted in possible, I think it was like, I want to say almost 8,000 or so layoffs is what people were
Okay.
thinking. But instead, what they did is they basically made that process more intelligent,
Hmm.
more efficient, where it was heavily manual before. And they reallocated those resources, those individuals to upskill them into another part of
Yeah.
the organization. And so when you talk about this, people going and gutting out tea. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like,
Yeah.
wait, like, I really do think that that example, and I don't know all of everything about IKEA, but that story stood out to me because it was exactly
Yeah.
how it should be. It is a reallocation. So it's what
Right.
the market you were trying to go after. How do you upskill these individuals that have all of this tribal knowledge about your organization, about your product,
Yeah.
about service delivery? How do you take this talent and add some additional skills and make this
Yeah.
new path forward? So it's one of those things where it's like, gosh, like I wish more people thought like that
Yes. I agree.
and I want the people within the organizations to feel more secure that, their leadership team is going to start thinking like that and
Right.
not thinking of like, nope, we just need to, now that we have AI and it's, making us more efficient, we don't need any
Yeah.
of these people. There'd be some attrition, but it does not
Sure.
have to be like entire teams. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So it's like, what does that look like in a very, and for smaller organizations, right? That's
Yeah.
a very, very hard pill to
Oh, yeah.
swallow. It is definitely not the
Exactly.
ideal scenario to just, chop,
Yeah.
here. It's like, no, you need to be wise
For
about it
sure.
and figure out better ways in which to, again, take the talent that you have, the good talent that you have, and reallocate it into places and spaces that will help
Exactly.
grow your organization because they're already there. And if you're
Yeah.
able to shift them and they're open to the shift, it could be a really great outcome. So I think in terms of that, like just wanting to kind of touch on a success story, let's just say, of a company that I
Yeah.
did it
I
right
think that's great.
when
That's
it
a great
came to
example.
that question.
The consequences of doing that with this sort of eager idea that you're going to claw back all sorts of revenue and bottom line and make profitability, like there are countless examples already in the world of people who did that and then sort of undermined their own intentions,
Yeah.
right? Who put systems in place that then didn't do the things and hurt their overall, not just the culture but
Yeah.
also the sort of collective information that the entire organization has,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Like, you're not just sending just people out the door. You're sending out culture. You're sending out all the tacit information that was in their head, their customer relationships, all of these things that like
Yeah.
get difficult for people to quantify,
Yeah.
right? And there's a way to do this transformation. I work with a lot of small businesses. Like we are primarily servicing people in the SMB, making their way up into the higher end of the M
Mhm.
part of the SMB, right? So their employees are important and integral to the growth of the company across time. There's no world in which I would have any ethical footing to walk into an organization and be like, downsize 200 people
Right.
worth, with this technology. That it's antithetical to why those organizations exist.
Yeah.
But if I slow that process down and make people sort of understand that what those people are scared that that's going to be my recommendation. They're afraid I'm going to like try to find ways to automate them
Oh,
out of
yeah.
jobs.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But the reality is, if you behave in a way that supports those employees, that supports people in your organization, if you're transparent about what your intentions are, if you talk about what sort of reinvestment is going to be made, right? Like, why is it so weird to people that I can have an efficiency gain, which helps my profitability, and I can reinvest some of that profitability back into the organization by way of training and upskilling and new things that
Yes.
happen.
Yes.
And why can't that be part of our transformation plans,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
those, that to me is where we're sitting with this technology. It would have been really difficult for me to go someplace and say, I'm going to make your AP process 30% more efficient. And in that, you can likely scale, 100% and only have to hire one additional person across the next 5 years
Yeah.
and try to make that true, right?
Mhm.
Across
Mhm.
however many years, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Inside the AI space, I'm seeing like immediate advantage. I'm seeing like almost instantaneous launches to value,
Yeah.
right? Like that. So I can actually talk about how these things become quantifiable, affect the people in the process, and
Yep.
where our recommendations of reinvestment for people should be to build
Yes.
skills, to move
Yes.
people forward. Like,
Mhm.
all of that is at play here.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that we touched on that. I think that's always concern for all business owners, of all
Yeah.
sizes. So my next question is during that AI cybersecurity session, your security framing stopped me. And it was because I was like, yes, you said prohibition is not the answer.
Yeah.
And then what is the answer? And how do you bring leadership along when their instinct is just to say no? And the reason that I think I asked the question actually that prompted this, which was, dealing with various types of nonprofits
Mhm.
and, companies that deal with sensitive data, right? And, the initial thought when this new technology is coming in is just like, we're not ready for it. So therefore, we're just going to, say don't use
Yeah.
it. However, I noted that, listen, your team members are using it. They have it on their cell phones. You know, they already
Yes.
have access and they're already thinking of ways in which they can be more efficient in their roles. So
Right.
you say don't use it at all. What you create is this level of secrecy of people
Yeah.
using it and then, trying to disguise how they're using it. Right.
Yeah. You
And
create
so
shadowing
what
effort.
I recommend is like, no, go and look at what the current policy is. Look at what are the things that you really are trying to protect. Yes, there's, all kinds of HIPAA and PPI, I think different
Mhm.
ways in which you need to guard and protect data. Nothing against that. And that data does need to be preserved in a way
Yes.
unbiased and all those things to serve the greater good. On board with that. However, I
Yeah.
do think you have to, as an organization, whether you are for profit or nonprofit, you have to continually look at the use cases in which you're wanting to apply the tool.
Yeah.
And it is not a
Right.
no and nothing, it is a what and when.
Yeah.
And so I think the what and when part of it is a better response. And it also is more transparent to the
Yes.
organization to say, you know what, we're trying to figure out what we're going to use it for and when we're going to use it
Right.
because we
Yeah.
understand that we need to incorporate it in some kind of way. And our next step is to investigate where and how that will be done. So it's like answering those questions instead of just a complete kibosh and
Yeah.
no,
Right.
and so, and it's interesting. I almost have to circle back with those folks because I was like, wow, that's a really interesting perspective. Let's see
Yeah.
how that works because I don't think it's not sustainable, right? Today, it's not sustainable, but I respect
No.
it. I understand it, but I also want people to open up their mind. It was what I was talking about in the beginning. It's the stretching of it. If
Yes.
you're thinking like that, it's because you don't understand what you could be leveraging and
Yeah.
how you could be leveraging it. And so you're thinking,
I totally
very
agree.
narrowly. And honestly, every organization, federal, state, private, not, not everyone
Yeah.
has had to contend with what will they do with this type of technology. So
Right.
even as, someone who maybe is not a global organization, is regional, in fact, they're having to contend with it just like the government had to contend with it,
Yeah.
just like, these larger organizations had to contend with it. And so, yes, the risk is there and you have to be thoughtful. And this is where I say partner with someone like Bravuraa to help you to be able to do these kinds of things, right? I don't say go at it alone. I don't think, you can understand enough to be able to protect yourself in all the different ways, right? It
Yes.
is complex
Completely.
when you're thinking in terms of very sensitive data, right? But there's
Yeah.
always the
For sure.
question of why are we preserving that data in this way? So if I can go back to the why we need to
Yeah.
preserve this data in this way, then I can solution and build workflows
Yeah.
and processes that support that, but still add some part of technology where it makes sense.
Yeah. Governance, an honest risk profile assessment, and
Yeah.
understanding that like the data profile of an organization is not just a ubiquitous thing. It's not like everything we have is sensitive and can't be used, right? Like
Yes.
all of that stuff needs to be unpacked appropriately in
Yeah.
order to understand how you get this gain.
Yeah.
But it's not just the issue at hand here is fundamental, that the way people are again thinking about this is as technology.
Yeah.
So they're entering into this space and saying like, well, when I adopt a new piece of technology, these are the things I'm concerned about. And now I have to vet this technology through those same concerns,
Mhm.
right? Without really reasoning with the concept that this isn't just a piece of technology, right? This isn't a tool. This isn't a thing that drops into a particular space. This is like a fundamental reimagining of how work gets done.
Yeah.
I just recently had this experience where we had a customer and we were onboarding Anthropic as a tool for
Mhm.
their organization to use to spin up some enterprise licensing. And I got one of those like security questionnaires back
An
from
ITQ.
right. I got one of those security questionnaires back, and it was like asking me questions on behalf of Anthropic around, the specificity of all of these things that are just like generally unanswerable. Like you're thinking about this as a platform or a piece of technology, and then you want me to answer these things about it that absolutely don't apply. So like how we think about this sort of security and how we think about technical debt and how we just think about all of these pieces, it needs to be rethought to match the caliber of the transformation that we're talking about.
Mhm, mhm.
Does need to be governed. It needs to also be like understood from a data perspective.
Yeah.
Like what are we gonna show it? When are we gonna show it? All of those things need to be understood in like the totality of it. But you can't just say like no. Like you're gonna miss
Yeah.
out on the largest technical transformation since the industrial revolution, and you're gonna do that based on information you had about systems that you learned 20 years ago. Like we
Yeah.
all need to step to the table and be challenged to rethink how we approach these problems, right?
Yeah.
And the approach you're taking is in my view exactly the way that you have that conversation, right? Like
Yeah.
what's the real risk? What's the real data profile? What's the outcome? Why would we undertake this risk? Like
Yeah.
all of those sorts of things make a difference to how it moves forward.
Yes, yes. I love that. All right. So I have got another one. You talked about creating a collaborative partnership between a business and whoever is helping them to navigate this. I actually use the word guide when I describe the
Yeah.
role because of how I approach it at Bravuraa. What does the partnership need to look like for implementation to actually hold? Because I do think, quite often I start, at the top. I'm starting with whoever is, the leader of the organization and working with them. And then they may bring in other folks in order to, like, okay, this is
Yeah.
who's going to help to drive this. And we kind of, do these different, I would say, different phases of communication, right? Where we, start here, go there, go back up, go back down. We kind of, it's a little bit whatever it takes to get it done. And so I would love for you and the experience that you talked about with enterprise, mid-sized companies to talk
Sure.
about how they're navigating that. What does the team structure look like for you? Are you dealing with chief operating officers? Are you dealing with the
Yeah.
CTOs? How is that working for you guys?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I'll answer it through the idea of how there's a service that we run called an AI lab, right?
Hmm.
Where we bring one organization in for 4 hours and we sit them down and we go through this whole 4 hour curriculum that revolves like some things about the history and scope of AI and
Yeah.
the things that are going to transform and change, even into use case development. And we have a
Mhm.
whole collaborative session in there, and then we produce proof of concepts in the lab and so on and so forth. So 4 hours, right? The question that I always get as we ramp toward one of these is like, who should I have in the room?
Mhm.
Who from the organization should show up to an AI lab, right? And I try to keep them to like between 5 and 10 people, right? So it's not a huge audience of people.
No.
So we have to be kind of selective of who we pick. And it's always about like, well, who can make decisions inside the purview that they have that can actually start to make change, right? Like who can affect those sorts of things. But also like who is going to be affected by that change? They also need to be represented in that room,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I want people who can make decisions, who understand the trajectory of the organization and would be would be moved by the potential threat to that organization. I need those people, but I also need the people who like show up every day and move the organization forward. Like I
Yeah.
need that to understand what this transformation is.
Yeah.
So it likely becomes a mix of, we've had founders and CEOs in the space, as well as, people who had 5 department or, 5-person teams.
Yeah.
We've had wide varieties of people in these labs. And that to me is pretty consistent to how I've seen
Yeah.
success across the board. Like
Mhm.
I can't talk to just one person who runs one team and make some gigantic transformation for the org.
Right.
Like that team,
Yeah.
that'll work, right?
Yeah.
So that from a strategic perspective, it all has to align. Like we
Yeah.
need the people who understand how to do that, all the way down to the people who are going to care. But I can't have everybody in the room.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
right, it becomes a like who represents who, and how do we make sure that everyone stays in a path of communication. And the most successful partnerships that I've had start in that way. They
Yeah.
start with like somebody brings a problem, somebody understands it from the strategy, somebody who sees how it aligns to the organization, and then being able to honestly communicate through all of that becomes the most like quintessential piece to success.
So you bring something to mind. I worked in manufacturing and we used to do what we call Kaizen. And so
Yeah, sure.
basically that's kind of sort of what you're describing to me and what is very familiar to me and how I actually the same kind of philosophy that I use within Bravuraa because I
Yeah,
do believe that listen, you know, the people that are actually doing the work, they understand it very intimately what's
yeah,
broken and they've also thought about what could make it better. Why not have them in the room
yeah,
too to be able
exactly.
to create the new so that it actually
Yeah.
works for the business? So
Oh my God.
highly sensitive to actually bringing that kind of cross-departmental group together in order
Yeah,
to support whatever it is we're trying to do. Because I
yeah.
do believe
Interview people.
if you're able to, and I love to bring them in because in Kaizen, you think in terms of, okay, no guardrails in fixing this thing. Like
Right.
literally, like what would be the best thing for the business? Not for this budget or for this department,
Exactly.
but what would be the best
Right.
thing for this business? And if we can just remove those guardrails, right, and take that and let people think freely, I find that in my business to be a very collaborative partnership that I really enjoy
Yes.
because it's like, you know what? Yes, that is going to be a change that is lasting, right?
Yeah.
If we do this in a silo and we do not have that kind of camaraderie and collaboration with the people that and that's why I call it guide because
Yeah.
I'm going to help
Exactly.
guide the conversations and help to create the space without the guardrails so that we can actually think about what's best for the organization not just this
Yeah.
team or just that team
Totally.
but it's like wait we're serving our customers what would be best for them like, we could do it and money was no thing at all technology was not a thing staffing was not a thing and then we could just create what needed to be created what does that look like and for me what
Yeah.
I like to do is take that picture and build from there. And
Yeah.
if we're able to build from there, I just find that the change usually, let's just say, becomes, very lasting. And people are able to go, you know what, we built this together. It's not like my company is coming in and building something for you and then leaving you with it. And you're like,
Yeah.
I don't even like it. Like, no, 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 we don't do that. We
Uh,
do not
you know,
do that. We work with you because
yeah.
it matters, and that's that operational infrastructure that I was talking about. Bravara really helps to
Yeah.
build, right? It because if we're able to help you with your business, coaches, they will give you, the advice that you need to give, or get CEO groups, they try and keep you accountable and different things like that. But that
Yeah.
operational infrastructure going into your company
Oh,
and
it's huge.
being part of the mastermind that helps to create the change that is necessary for
Yeah.
scaling and for growth totally different problem to fix. Totally different problem to fix. So, one other question for you. So, for a small business owner who is still watching from the sidelines, what is the one thing you want them to walk away from this conversation knowing?
Yeah. This is a great one. I mean, there's urgency and they should, that's what I want them to know.
Yeah.
I want them to know that they may have an understanding of what the scale of this technology is now, but even that is likely not big enough for the
Mhm.
sort of transformation that's happening. The amount of or the pace of the change of the last even just 6 months is comparative to the pace of change of the last 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's going to be new model releases likely by the end of next week
Oh, yeah.
that are going to update even that forecast.
Yeah.
So if you think you have time to catch up, like the more you think that, the more you're making it difficult on yourself to actually catch up. Like get busy.
Yes. Well, get something started, and, reach out to us, because, this is
Right.
definitely the thing that we are very passionate about. I think that is what drew me to you is, in the presentation, I'm like a hand raiser. I've got questions and I
Yeah.
want to engage
I
with
love
you. And then I
totally
waited to
agree with
talk with you afterwards. I was like, okay, John, I got to have you on because I'm so passionate about this. And I think that those that wait, I think you're just putting
you. Yeah.
yourself more at a disadvantage. Competing is
Right.
already difficult, but to wait on the sidelines until what you believe is going to kind of shake out and,
Yes.
all of a sudden solve itself is just not a
Yeah.
good business practice because you
Yeah.
will start to feel, I believe every business will start to feel a pinch within the next 12 months
Yes.
of companies that have adopted AI, into their infrastructure and the companies that are just beginning, right? Who have
Yeah.
kind of stood around watching, thinking like it's going to blow over. It's like not going to blow over, guys. Like it's already, and I always go back to like, you've been using it. You just didn't, see it so openly as we do
Yeah.
now that we all can touch, feel it. It wasn't like
Right.
that before, but it was a part of your life before. You had this before. So I think that I'm always saying, listen, I don't believe in making AI your therapist. I don't believe in those impractical applications, but I do believe in it for your business. I do
Yeah.
believe that it is a real game changer when it comes to your business
Yeah.
and being a thought partner that is intelligent. Does it
Yeah.
make mistakes? Yes, it does. Do you have to try and build it to safeguard some of those things? Yes, you do. But I think that the overall gain
Mhm.
for time savings, and I think people have seen that incrementally, right? As soon as they
Yeah.
started to touch the tool and they're like, oh my goodness, it served up a response. Now, it may not be a good response, but it did serve you up something rather quickly. Just
Yeah.
imagine being able to teach it the logic and where to pull from and how to actually navigate this vast library that it has at its disposal. No pun intended on taking people's, information and not paying them or giving them
Yeah.
acknowledgement. That is not what I'm saying. But my point is, it's a vast knowledge base, right? And so
Yeah.
when you think of this vast knowledge base, it's like I could go anywhere for the answer, Otissa, but it's like, like I need to kind of, this is where you do walk guardrails
Yeah.
because you need to be able to control it enough for your business to serve up the right type of outcomes that you're looking for.
Yeah, totally agree. And I would just say, like in kind of closing on that thought, I think it's easy to get excited about technology and how to use it and what gain it will have. But the reality is, like, I do all the work that I do not because I love technology,
Yeah.
right? Like I do the work that I do because I care about people. I want them to understand the scale of this transformation, and I want the people to be able to adapt and sustain and thrive. And I feel like this technology gives us the opportunity to do that if you
Yeah.
move through this ethically at the right pace, using the right technology for the right reasons. All of those sorts of things can culminate in a way that like helps us transform work.
Yes.
So
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
that's the path I am
Yep.
on here at Impact Networking. So
I love it.
that's what I'm
I
looking
love it. And thank you, John. This has been so good. So, in closing, I like to just kind of shift it. Now, we're not talking about all the tech stuff that we talked about. Give us one fun fact. You talked about punk rock,
Sure.
I think you talked
Punk
about
rock,
punk rock and
birds.
birds. So, give us
Yeah.
one fun fact from either of those categories
Oh
that,
wow.
we can leave on just this really light.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. It is going to be slightly technology related. Is that all right?
Birds and punk rock
It's
techno. Okay, go for it.
but it's just about spring migration season here in Chicago, which means all the birds are going to be coming through. I just yesterday ran some statistics against all the birds that I've seen, and I have seen 366 unique individual birds, and I've counted a total number of like 9,700 birds
Oh,
across 12 years. So yeah, an interesting fact. I go out and I look at birds all the time.
I love that. Listen, you have to be able to come down from all of the technology from
Yeah.
behind the computer and do something. I love interior design. That's my thing. So I love
Yeah. Perfect.
that that you do that. So thank
You
you
gotta get
so
out into
much.
the world.
for being gracious
Oh, of
and
course.
joining me. And I'm super excited. I'm super excited.
Yeah.
There's so much more for us to collaborate on. So I'll be in
Yeah,
touch.
for sure.
But thank
Thank
you,
you so
John.
much.
I appreciate you.
Yeah, you too. Bye, Otissa.
Okay. Bye.